Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. And you can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today, you did such a great job before that I had to have him back to hear more from Jason Hunt. Our guest today is Jason Hunt. Jason Hunt is a meditation teacher as well as an Enneagram practitioner. And we're going to be finding out more about what is the Enneagram. You can find out more about Jason Hunt and his wonderful work at his website, waterprana.net. Welcome, Jason Hunt.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be back, to say the least.
So, Jason Hunt, what exactly is the Enneagram?
Well, simply put, I brought another visual aid. It can be just put down to a symbol, but it's about unfolding this symbol. So for our listeners, I'll describe this symbol. Again, our viewers can see this. It's a circle, and it's divided into 9 portions, but it's divided very specifically in a specific way. So it has an equilateral triangle inside the circle. The apex of the triangle is pointed up. And there's another little figure in here for those of you who are watching. It's the blue line that goes around in here that touches 6 different points, but doesn't touch the other 3. And it's kind of a zigzaggy pattern on the inside of it. This is a line. There's 3 lines here. There's the circle, there's the triangle, and then there's this zigzaggy thing, which we will call either the period or the hexagram, because it touches 6 points. So this is what the Enneagram is. It is a symbol. And because it's a symbol, it opens. We're not meant to, it's like words are symbols. And we're not meant to hold on to the words. Once you have the meaning, you can let go of the words. So the Enneagram is this symbol that opens to the infinite. It's the only way I can say it. And it shows, well, we'll get into what it shows in a little bit, but it is a very useful tool, to say the least.
I love that explanation. I love interviewing people here on the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio because everyone has a different definition. So as a medical intuitive healer, when I'm doing my medical intuitive readings, sometimes I use tools like the Enneagram to help people understand core aspects of their personality. So if you ask me to define the Enneagram, I would say it's a way of understanding core aspects of your personality.
That's very true too. Absolutely. Yes,
So,
let's get more into the work part of it.
Yes. Now, where did the Enneagram come from?
Well, like all really good, authentic traditions, its history is shrouded in mystery in the depths of time. In modern times, it's come to us through a gentleman named George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. And he brought it back largely through Russia and the Caucasus, and then established a center in Paris, and eventually made his way to the United States several times. But this was in the early 1900s, probably 1918 through about 1929 or so. He passed in 1949. So really all of our modern day Enneagram lineages trace their way back to this one gentleman named George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. We'll call him Mr. Gurdjieff for short. And he learned it from a school, a esoteric school in the East. He didn't specify, but it had definitely been known for hundreds of years, probably longer, probably 1500 maybe even a couple thousand years. So it's, again, its roots are shrouded in mystery. We're not exactly sure where it came from. I do know for sure that because there's a circle and there's the triangle in there, it comes directly out of the flower of life in sacred geometry, which again is a language that has been throughout this entire cosmos for as long as it's been around.
So, and I love that when we interviewed you before, you talked about sacred geometry. Now,
Yeah.
for our audience, will you spell Gurdjieff? I'm putting you on the spot there to spell a different name. It's not like Mr. Smith.
Not at all. No.
I know the beginning is Giu, and
Mhm.
yeah, I'm pretty good so far.
So it's actually, I think it's an Armenian name and Russian as well. So in the Russian, it would be gurdjieff, but it's Gurdjieff, and the emphasis on jieff. So gurdjieff.
Okay. Thank you for that. And he's very much with the mystery school.
Yes.
So how do we use the Enneagram in modern times?
Well, in modern times, it has, there was a gentleman named Claudio Naranjo, and one of his disciples named Oscar Chazo. I believe it was Mr. Chazo who brought it in the 1960s to the United States through a program called ARICA. And largely, it is, I would say, a divination tool that helps us understand our personalities. And it's been replete through, like, even corporate industries will use this now. The Enneagram test will show up on their entry forms and stuff to tell you what type you are. So it's kind of like astrology or human design. These are, again, tools and symbols that are divinatory, show us how the infinite is manifesting here in finite realms. So most of the time in modern times, it's been used to classify people in the 9 different types of personalities. And there's actually 3 subtypes for each of those, so about 27 different subtypes. But it's really much more than that. That's, I would say, the surface layers of it. So that's how it's mostly been used in modern times, but we can use it for our healing as well.
So, and I love that you pointed out that corporations have Enneagram tests similar to Myers-Briggs analysis, right?
Yes, very much.
To help people understand who they are and what professions or jobs you might excel in.
Mhm.
So Jason Hunt, as a meditation teacher and an Enneagram practitioner, that begs the question for me, how do you use the Enneagram with your clients?
I actually ask them not to take the tests, not to define which type they are, because very much like astrology, astrology is the different signs around a center. We're all of the astrological signs, and we are all of the types on the Enneagram also. We're each one of these 9 points. Every single human being can identify with, can relate to. But there's one that is what Mr. Gurdjieff called our chief feature, and it's like our go-to mask, our go-to persona of how we interact with the world. All of our secondary, silly little weaknesses circle like an axis around this larger one, which goes back to what you were talking about with understanding the core wound, Catherine. So how do I use it? I help people identify, and when I say identify, I'm not talking about gender. I'm talking about who they truly are as their essence. I help them identify as their essence and help them live from that place. There's a place within each one of us that cannot ever be tarnished. Not only has not been tarnished, but cannot be tarnished. That's our essence. And that's where, when we're living from that place, the human stuff tends to take a back seat. Let's say it that way.
So for our audience, Jason Hunt, would you be willing to discuss your chief feature, and I'll talk about myself?
Sure. My chief feature is I would be classified as a 5 on the Enneagram. And it is basically, well, like in the last interview, you probably noticed that I had more hair on my face. I don't like being in public. I would rather build a wall of books so that you can't see me, but you could reference all the material. Um, so fives also like to know things. One of the greatest gifts that life has given me is to be able to say, I don't know, and to be able to let go of that chief feature, so to speak, and live beyond it, come back to my essence, come back to, again, it's a childlike state, but it's even before our inner child. It's that essence, which doesn't take things personally.
And so, what is the key word for a 5, or key words for a 5?
I think, or rather, I know. Those are keywords, and they tend to be more isolatory, like hermits. I really enjoy my alone time, and I get along well with people. But before I get along well with people, I tend to have this inner turmoil of I don't have enough energy. What do these people want from me anyway? All this sort of inner stuff, which, if I'll get my visual aid here, it has to do with this blue line. It has to do with the mental stuff, generally speaking. So these 3 lines as well, they tie into our mental, emotional, and physical bodies. And most of the stuff that humans have going, whether you're in the United States or in India or in Japan or Bulgaria or wherever, it's all human stuff. And most of it is mental right now. There's some emotional clearing that needs to go on as well. But most of it is mental. So it helps me get out of my head, get back to my essence, back into my heart. And again, not take things so personally.
So you would be described as the thinker then?
Yes.
Yes. So I, on the other hand, I'm a type 2. I'm a nurturer. And it's really funny, even to think about, here we are in the Enneagram, and I spent the morning like watering all my flowers and taking care of my dog. And so it's no wonder that I'm not only a medical intuitive, but I'm also a healer, right?
Yes.
Is that it just comes naturally to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the challenges for the nurturer is to nurture ourselves, right? So nurturers can be so busy nurturing everyone and everything around them that they neglect to nurture themselves. So at age 65, I've learned to have a balance, and I know what nurtures me. And so while I was watering my flowers and taking care of my dog, I also spent some time lying in my hammock and listening to my birds, and of course my garden and all my flowers and my orchids just nurture my soul, right?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
But type 2s, nurturers can get out of balance if we don't also, it's like ourselves as well as others.
Yes, don't forget yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've learned that. Now, Jason Hunt, how will knowing our chief feature help us change our lives?
It is the sort of main persona or mask that we're using to interact with the world. Just to know that it's a mask, first off, is pretty huge. To know that it's not your true self. Mr. Gurdjieff used to say that once you knew your chief feature, you had an option. At that point, once you're aware of it, you can either change it or keep it because it does some good, you know. Mr. Gurdjieff's chief feature was he was an 8. So one of their 8's properties is that they get angry. So he would use that to prompt his students to put them in emotional situations, but he was acting. And he acted so well that his students couldn't tell the difference, you know, and they were, you know, really going through the internal stuff, the emotional stuff, the mental stuff. But you know, if they screwed up, of course, his compassion would come out. The mask would come off, so to speak. So, from my point of view, and I've only been working with this for about 5 or 6 years, really. I've known about Mr. Gurdjieff's work for close to 20 years, and I've been indulging in that. But really applying the Enneagram, I haven't been doing it for that long, from my point of view. So, to know one's chief feature is to know the great knot, and KNOT, of our core wounding, and to see when it comes up. And again, at that point, once we see it, once we have awareness of it, we can either do something else, do something about it, or allow it to propagate. So for me, it has been not taking things personally, understanding that it's okay not to be perfect. I don't have to know everything all the time. Uh, and it really helps. It helps relationships, I should say, but it's not just our relationships, it's my relationship with myself, as you were mentioning. Um, so I'm a Libra in the astrological stuff, and I get that whole nurturing the other without nurturing oneself first. That's generally what we're taught. That's, you know, by our parents and society and everything else. And after a while, it works as well as it does. And if you're living that, you know, you're bending over backwards going, no, it doesn't hurt. It's okay. It's fine. And then you realize, wow, I haven't been nurturing me. And my little tidbit on this, I say it's very much like if if I want to give you, Catherine, $5, I'd better have $5 in my pocket or my bank account. So to fill myself up with compassion first, and then I have it to offer to other people. That has been a huge, huge shift in my life, rather than just go and go and go and give and give and give. And, you know, again, bending over backwards and pretending like it doesn't hurt. So self-care first, and then I can offer something to others.
Great information. And again, going back to my type and being a nurturer, nurturers, one of their chief addictions is to sugar and sweets. And I've definitely had eating disorders twice in my life. And, you know, part of the learning to get out of that and to bring myself back into balance is to look at, well, what is it that I really, you know, how do I really need to nurture myself? You know, what is it at the core of my soul that my soul needs? And when I nurture my soul, I mean, I still like sugar and chocolate. I mean, I don't think I'll ever not like that. But it's when I'm really nurturing my soul that I'm in balance and I'm not addicted to it.
Yes, nicely put.
And with
Yes.
that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. We're learning about what is the Enneagram from Jason Hunt. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. So Jason Hunt, I love that we're talking about the Enneagram in a lot of different ways, different aspects, and looking at it in different ways, because the way that it's often used in modern times is as a personality assessment tool. But at the same time, you talk about the practice of non-identification, right?
Yes.
So the Enneagram helps us to understand core aspects of our personality. What is the practice of non-identification, and how can that help us change our life?
It's actually going deeper than our personality. And this is where the meditation comes in. To know yourself, as the Socrates schools used to say. Um, and that's older than Socrates also, but it was popularized through him. So it is, again, a very deep tool. Um, when we know who we truly are, we don't look outside for validation so much anymore. We have this connection to spirit and we know our value. Um, so that is a big, big shift. And again, that shifts the internal relationship and the external relationships. So this non-identification can heal, again, one's own relationship with oneself, but also how one interacts with the rest of the world, the rest of the reality out there. Um, the triangle part of the Enneagram is where outside forces, as Mr. Gurdjieff used to say, enter into the cycle. So the circle part is showing processes, and it's he calls it the law of seven, or the law of the octave, and the triangle also talks about the law of three, or the triunity. So every time we see a polarity, we live in polarity of consciousness, so that both sides of our brain are polarized, and we're looking through these two eyes, generally speaking. So we see a polarized world. Uh, every time we see black and white, or left and right, or hot and cold, there's always a threeness, but that's not always evident. So to understand that threeness, uh, once again, come back to our essence, not identifying with our persona, identifying with something deeper than that. Uh, it helps us not take things personally, as I mentioned earlier. But again, that shift in the relationships, it shifts this personal relationship with yourself. So again, you're not taking things personally. You can see where other people are coming from as well, that they have a persona, and that they're may or may not be acting authentically from their essence. And this again, it I know we can't swear on here, but it cuts through the BS, which again, there's so much mental stuff in this world that is extraneous, let's say. It cuts through all that, straight to the truth, straight to the quick of things. Um, this can be very helpful and very refreshing, let's say, almost purifying, I would say.
So I love that we're talking about this non-identification, and I'll bring it back to my work as a medical intuitive healer, because one of the things that I frequently look at when I'm doing a medical intuitive reading is a person's relationship with themselves, right? So your relationship with yourself is the basis for which all your other relationships are based. So if I don't have a healthy, happy relationship with my true self, then it's difficult for me to have a happy, healthy relationship with Jason, or my partners, or my friends, or my family, or anyone else. So one of the things I look at is, do you have a healthy relationship with your true, authentic self? And I think, Jason Hunt, based on what you're saying, this goes beyond your persona, right?
Yes. Yes, it goes deeper to the character. And again, the character fixation is where our ego develops when we're a child, and it's where our core wound, which is what our ego develops around, usually happened. So usually by the time a child is 3 years old, they have had a thought at least once, sometimes many times, that they don't want to be here anymore. And every single human being has come in here with a huge open heart, just, and usually the purpose is to love. And then by the time we're 3, it gets slapped shut and we don't want to be here anymore. So yeah, that's where, again, the core wounding takes place. And now that we're usually, most of us are in mature bodies, we can look back on that place and remedy it, find the remedies and find the healing that needs to take place.
Yes. And what you and I are talking about goes to the core question that so many people have is, who am I? Right?
Yes.
Who am I? And so many people want to find their true soul purpose. Well, you can't find your true soul purpose if you don't know who you are. Right?
Correct. Very
And,
true.
and so much of discovering who you are and what your soul purpose is has to do with, I would call, uncovering the masks and uncovering the projections that society or your culture may have put on you, right?
Yes. Yes. Very much so.
So uncovering. And so the benefits of having this happy, healthy relationship with our true self, I would say, is deep inner peace, calmness, happiness, centeredness, groundedness, feeling connected to all that is, right?
Yes, I fully agree.
And
Absolutely.
so all these different tools, whether it be the Enneagram or meditation or spiritual work, the goal of that is to take you to a healthy relationship with your true self.
Yes, I fully agree with that. Absolutely.
Now, I love your thoughts on the Enneagram, Jason Hunt, being so much beyond being a personality tool. What are the 3 dimensions of time that the Enneagram describes?
Well, they directly relate to the 3 lines of the Enneagram. And you'll hear me say Enneagram and Enneagram. I just kind of switch between the 2. So the circle, in this case, the green line that goes around it, represents biological time, or we could call it chronological time also. Just quickly, these points around here can represent musical notes also. So it would be do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. These places where the triangle.
So
Go
the
ahead.
solfeggio, that relates to the solfeggio harmonics on
I'm
which,
not sure
yeah,
about that word
yes,
solfeggio, but
yes,
the just intonation. Sure.
yes. So do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and don't ask me to sing. It's
Yes.
the musical notes that Gregorian chants are based on, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Which goes back to again. So yeah, so sound healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the basis of solfeggio harmonics. So
Yes.
okay.
So that's how this musical scale develops. That's also how we develop as biological beings. So this is chronological time. So we would enter in as a baby here and then grow and get older and then finish our lives. And it's that cycle. So once again, this represents cycles and the development of those cycles, but also the unity moving through the cycle where other forces can join in. So the triangle part, where these other forces join in, represents eternity. And have you ever been so angry that you don't even remember not being angry? And it's like anger is, it's like you're in the ocean of it. I call it the ocean of emotion. And you're just in it and you can't see your way out. And it's always been angry and it's always going to be angry. We're touching, there's a Greek word called the kairos, the eternal moment. And that's where our emotions come in. The emotional body feels like this is all that there is. And eventually, we do change and we come out of it and calm down. It's okay, Jason, whatever you have to do to move along. Um, uh, so there's that eternal aspect of time. There's the chronological aspect of time. And then there's this other, the hexagram in there, which represents our mind once again. Our mind can look forward in time. It can anticipate certain things, and it can look back in time. It remembers certain things. And sometimes, many times, because of our memories and our anticipations, it paralyzes us and we end up caught in the mind. But these are, once again, the three different dimensions of time, and I would say experiences of time, that the Enneagram shows us.
So if I could paraphrase that, that would be chronological time, eternal time, and then our perception of time, right?
Yes. The perception of time is, Mr. Gurdjieff said, the ultimate subjective. So the perception of time, I'll just speak about that for a moment. For instance, we've probably all had the experience of 5 minutes taking an hour. It feels like an hour long, but it's only been 5 minutes, or vice versa. An hour will go by in 5 minutes, and it seems like 5 minutes. That's how these interviews tend to be with you, Catherine. So that's the experience of time. Yes, and the perception, I would say.
Yes. And also what's interesting is when I do my medical intuitive readings, I look at where your energy is. So what do I mean by that? So if 85% of my energy is stuck in the past, I'm going to be pretty exhausted. And that's what happens when we don't fully resolve our emotional garbage, which we all have, right?
Yes.
So a lot of my clients who are exhausted, what's going on is their energy is literally stuck in the past. On the other hand, if your energy is stuck in the future, well, I'm so focused on what might happen or what could happen, or as they say, false evidence appearing real, also known as fear. When I'm
Yes.
stuck in fear, then I'm so much projected ahead of myself, that I don't have the energy to live my life now. And so, we want to be in the now, and enlightened people talk about the now, and the now being all that is. So as we draw our awareness back to the now and drop into how am I feeling now, my breath, my grounding, then you can pull your energy out of all these other places where it may be.
Yes. Or it might be stuck.
Where
Yes.
it may be stuck. Exactly. So fascinating. And with that, let's take another break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author, and we're listening to meditation teacher Jason Hunt explain for us what is the Enneagram and how it can help us. Jason Hunt, so you've explained to us about the law of three, which is my understanding is these different perceptions of time, right? Chronological time, eternal time, and our perception of time.
Yes.
What is the law of seven, and how does that relate to the Enneagram?
Okay, the law of seven. Let me back up a little bit. The law of three is a little bit more than just the three dimensions of time.
Oh, please. Yes.
The law of three is really, in Christianity, we talk about God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost. It's that triune unity. It's the, again, things look like they're two-ness here, or polarity consciousness, or duality consciousness is another way of saying it, but there's always threeness. That third aspect might not be apparent right off. So if you have mommy and daddy, the child's not there right off, but it is in the ethers. It's present, and if they come together, and then the baby comes out. So this threeness is learning that there's unity beyond this apparent duality, and that is really, really huge. That's the law of three. It happens to manifest throughout the reality in, again, mommy, daddy, child, up, down, middle, hot, cold, warm. It takes three things to make something else. Mr. Gurdjieff used to say this one. If you have flour and water and fire, you can make bread. If you have flour and water, you just make paste. You can make paper mache. If you have water and fire, you might get steam. You might just get a pile of ashes. If you have flour and water, I don't know if you've ever put like finely ground flour on a fire, but it makes a big fireball. Again, ashes. That's all you get. So if you put all three of them together, then in certain proportions, in the correct proportions, then you can have bread. So that's the law of three, and it's again replete throughout the universe, within us and around us. Very similar is the law of seven. The law of seven, very surface, very superficially, is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and how that musical scale progresses. We can also say that it's our chakras, because that the same form, the same sacred geometry, basically, I'll speak to you and our viewers in this way, created not only the musical scale, it created red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet of the visible spectrum, and it created our bodies, and it created the world that we're living in. So again, this is a law that is found universally within us and around us. And the easiest way to talk about it for us probably is the musical scale.
Okay, and again, going back to the solfeggio harmonics, they're ascending frequencies is a good way of thinking about it, right? So start at the base chakra where we're connected to the earth, and then move all the way up to higher consciousness where we're connected to the divine. These are ascending frequencies. How does the Enneagram relate to vortex mechanics?
Aha. This is really exciting to me. Vortex mechanics, I'm not sure if our listeners are aware, some of y'all might be, it has to do with 0 point and free energy. And Mr. Gurdjieff said that the Enneagram was the perpetual motion that scientists are always looking outside of themselves for. Well, it is outside of ourselves, but it's also within us. So how does it relate to vortex technology? Mr. Gurdjieff also mentioned that each one of these points on the Enneagram is a do unto itself. There's inner octaves, is what he would say. So each one of these has an octave associated with it. So if we know that the Enneagram here, it delineates the octave. So if we put a little Enneagram on each one of these points, we would see that it's not just a motion coming around like this, developing the octave. There's inner octaves, and those would be like it's going around on the inside, 0.1 and then 0.2 and 0.3. So if you plot this around there, it's going in a spiral around a spiral. And this is vortex mechanics. Once again, this has a lot to do with not just free energy, but us as human beings. HeartMath Institute has found out that we have 2 toroidal fields coming out of our heart. They're the largest electromagnetic fields that our body produces, with the exception of the Merkaba. So the Merkaba has a whole lot to do with our toroidal fields. And this is just something I can mention here, just barely scrape the top of the iceberg, but it has a whole lot to do with vortex mechanics. One other little tidbit I'll give to you here. We tend to think that our Earth and the moon are moving around the sun, and the rest of the planets are moving around the sun. That's true, but it's not quite the way that we were taught in school. Our sun itself is moving through space, and it's kind of dragging the planets along with it. So our sun itself is a vortex, and it's connected to another vortex, another sun in our galaxy, and they're moving together as a vortex inside this great big vortex of our galaxy. So vortexes inside of vortexes inside of vortexes, that's who we are. That's what we are. And once again, as humanity is learning this, we are outmoding electricity and these external forms of technology. We're learning how to do something different.
As we evolve. I love
Yes.
it. So Jason Hunt, those of us who get into natural healing, it often affects our whole perception of the world. How has the Enneagram changed your life?
The first and most major thing is that I don't take myself as personally. Once again, I can see my stuff. I can see when it's, oh, there's my stuff. There it is. Yeah, I'm doing that old thing again. And like I said earlier, I can either, go with it. Yep, I'm just doing that old thing again, allow myself to become more of a 5, so to speak. Or I can step out of that, not take it personally, come back to my essence, remember that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. The human experience is this little blip, but I am eternal. And that is a huge shift. It's that shift between, again, being a spiritual being having a human experience, or a human being having a spiritual experience. The experience, whether it's spiritual or human, is finite, has a beginning and an end. But your aspect, your essence, is not finite. So that in itself, once again, it changed my perspective on myself, changed my relationship with myself. It changed how I interact with the world, and largely by not taking things personally.
So tell us more about that. And
Okay. Um, there's a gentleman, Don Miguel Ruiz. It doesn't have anything to do with the Enneagram, but he wrote a book called The Four Agreements. The first agreement, um, well, it's not the first one, but the first one is be impeccable with your word, and then it's do not make any assumptions, uh, always do your best, and
don't take anything personally.
don't take
Yeah.
anything personally.
Yeah.
So he came to this from a different perspective, but it's the same tool, and it is so useful. For those of you who have played with the Four Agreements, those are great tools also. And they help us, once again, come back to our essence, not engage in or identify, to use that word, with our personality or even character so much. Come back to our connection to God. So, if I may, with our visual aid, once again, as we're developing as children, we tend to go along this line of the emotional body, which is the herd mentality. And it's going along with everybody else and seeing what is expected of us here. Going to school, it's the enculturation process, the education process, socialization process. Going on this leg of the triangle is going within ourselves and individuating. This is where we find our individual connection to Great Spirit. So once again, most of us tend to be more outward and stuck in our personalities. If we can develop this other line and develop our individuation and specifically our connection to Great Spirit, God, the universe, whatever you want to call that, that's where, from my point of view, that's where we need to be in our evolution right now.
Very fascinating. And again, I'll bring it back to my work as a medical intuitive, because as you pointed out, when we start out as a member of the tribe, right? And the tribe says, wear a hat to church on, first of all, go to church on Sunday. Like, that's the day of the week. Like, we can't worship on any other day, but that's the day. And then while you're there, you've got to wear a hat, and then, by the way, don't eat, meat on Fridays. And, this whole long list of things that we're supposed to do to be a spiritual person or a good person. And as you sort of go along, you go, wait a minute, I can worship any day of the week and I don't have to wear a hat. And, what I eat has absolutely nothing to do with my spirituality. Right. So we can question all this. And anyway, so you start out in the tribe. And when I'm doing my work as a medical intuitive healer, one of the things I look at, there's a spiritual clock, okay, going back to our perception of time. And so you start out in the tribe, following the tribe rules, no matter how insane they are. And then what happens is at 5 o'clock, something happens, and it's usually a spiritual crisis, whether you get really sick or, there's some sort of breakdown. And it's what I refer to as a breakdown to breakthrough. And at that point, you get new tools, right? Whether it be I learned the Enneagram, or I learned to meditate, or I learned that I'm a 2 on the Enneagram or a 5 on the Enneagram. Anyway, you get new tools, and then from there, you keep marching forward. And then when you get on the other side of the clock, then you're in spiritual awareness, and you're aware of how you show up in the world, what your purpose is, and your spiritual development and ascension just accelerates.
Yes, you got it.
Jason Hunt, any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, once again, to not put so much emphasis on the appearance of things. Things are getting, there's a lot of chaos in the world, in the outer reality, especially. If we keep our center and do our inner work, it's going to help not only ourselves, but those around us. So, as I said last time, just remember to be here now and be love now. And that's D work, as I say, capital letters, D work.
Okay, I love that message. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. Our guest today has been Jason Hunt, meditation teacher, and he's been explaining to us about what is the Enneagram. You can find out more about Jason Hunt and his wonderful work at waterprana.net. And as Jason Hunt said, now, bring your energy into the present now, be here now, be love now. And when you're love in the moment, everything heals naturally. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.